Well, good morning, everyone. Bon matin, tout le monde. My name is Mark Butler. I'm the Director of Communications for Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority. At this point in time, I'd like to ask everybody if they would please turn off their cameras and mute their microphones. Once the presentations start, the presenters will turn on their cameras and their microphones. We would like to acknowledge that the land where the Gordie Howe International Bridge will be constructed sits on Anishinaabe territory. The Anishinaabe in the Windsor area are known as the Three Fire Confederacy, which consists of the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. This land has also served as a place of refuge for the Huron-Wyandot people. On behalf of WDBA and our private sector partner, Bridging North America, I'd like to thank you for joining us at yet another announcement regarding the Gordie Howe International Bridge project. In addition to the media who are joining us today, we have members of our board of directors and the International Authority, and I'd like to welcome them for joining us today. This is the first time we're holding a media event virtually, but it's necessary given the unprecedented events over the past few months. I'm hoping that everything goes smoothly today, but please bear with us as we move along with our agenda. Again, a reminder to turn off your cameras and mute your microphones. We have a total of 5 speakers this morning. The first 2 will provide a brief update on some of the construction work and the progress made to date on this once-in-a-generation project. You'll also hear from a number of speakers, including representatives from community groups in Windsor and Detroit, about an important announcement regarding the community benefits plan for the Gordie Howe International Bridge project. The information that will be presented in this meeting, as well as some new B-roll, has been sent to you electronically, and you should now have that in your inboxes. Following the presentation, we will allow an opportunity for the media to ask questions. So again, at this time, I would ask if you have not muted your microphone and turned off your camera to please do so. And please stay in that mode until the question and answer period, where I'll give you further instructions on how you can pose your questions. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our Chief Executive Officer for Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority, Bryce Phillips.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. As was mentioned earlier, this is the first time that we are holding a virtual briefing. And while we are unable to host a tour of the construction sites, we will be providing some B-roll, which Mark talked to, which shows the tremendous work that is currently underway on all 4 components of the project. We look forward to hosting you, on-site and in person in what I hope will be the near future. With these unprecedented times, everyone has had to adapt, and that includes our team at the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority. The health and well-being of our staff, our contractors, our stakeholders, and the public as a whole is paramount to the WDBA. We responded quickly to COVID-19 by closing the community offices in Sandwich and in Southwest Detroit. We also closed our head office at 100 Olette Avenue to all visitors, and we provided the necessary equipment for our staff to work remotely so we could continue our oversight of the Gordie Howe International Bridge project. We also did that and set that up so we could remain in contact with each other, and importantly, with the public and our stakeholders. Even with all everyone has to do to manage their lives in the presence of COVID-19, construction work continued at all 4 components of the project. At the ports of entry in Canada and the United States, at the Michigan interchange, and at the bridge site itself. My colleague Aaron Epstein will brief you on some of the highlights of that work in a few minutes. And all of this work was done following all the safety protocols to ensure all staff were properly protected from COVID-19. Some examples of what was done include physical distancing measures, masks for all workers, daily screening on the project sites, and suspending cross-border travel except for essential workers. We continue to develop our return to office plan and monitor recommendations of the appropriate authorities as we do that planning. As I stated earlier, safety is paramount at the Gordie Howe International Bridge project. I would like to thank all the people working on the project for their ongoing commitment during these unique and difficult times. Their dedication has not faltered, and as a result, we have been able to continue construction during the pandemic and continue to work toward having the Gordie Howe International Bridge project open to traffic by the end of 2024. I would also like to thank you, the media, for your ongoing interest in the project and for helping keep the public on both sides of the border informed of our progress. I would be happy to answer questions you may have at the end of today's event. So I think, Mark, back to you.
Thank you, Bryce. I would now like to introduce Aaron Epstein, the Chief Executive Officer for Bridging North America.
Thanks, Mark. Morning to everybody, and I'm very pleased to join everyone today. As Bryce mentioned in his remarks, the last few months have been very challenging for everyone around the world, and no different than those working on the Gordie Howe International Bridge project. The project was considered essential infrastructure. We were able to continue our construction activities on both sides of the border, as Bryce had mentioned, while keeping the health and safety of our workforce and contractors in the top of our minds. We've taken many precautionary measures to help prevent the spread of the COVID-19, including some safety protocols that Bryce mentioned, and some procedures at our construction sites and our office sites on both sides of the river, in accordance with the new governmental orders. Now, some of the highlights over the past few months that we've been able to still accomplish. Overall, our design is progressing. We're nearing completion. The design is being finalized and it's being reviewed by subject matter experts from around the world. On I-75 in Michigan, as part of phase 1, we've demolished 3 of the road bridge crossings at Springwells, Livernois, and Clark. And now we've continued to work on the reconstruction with current activities that are including some of the excavation, abutment wall work, and pile driving that you'll see out there. At the 2 ports of entry, preparatory activities are still ongoing. They're needed to enhance the ground conditions in order to provide a firm foundation, which will be used to support the various buildings out there and the road surfaces at both the Canadian and the US ports of entry. We're continuing, we're making some considerable progress as well, even in light of some of the difficulties we've been having with COVID-19. To date, on the Canadian side, over 2/3 of the wick drains that are about 150,000 wick drains have been installed on the site, and we've placed about 650,000 tons of engineered fill as surcharge. At the US POE, almost half of our 105,000 wick drains have been installed, and we're continuing to place engineered fill on top as surcharge as well. For the bridge sites on both sides of the border, the 24 drilled shafts for the bridge footings have been completed, and now we're underway with construction for the tower footings and the foundations for the main bridge on both sites. We're expecting to see some of those tower foundations continue throughout the summer, and you'll be able to see some of that above the ground later this year. All of this information that I've mentioned is going to be available in the media kits, as well as photos, videos of all 4 components to the Gordie Howe International Bridge. And hopefully next time we'll be able to get you out on site again and show you the real work that's going on out there by the great crews that we have. With that, I will turn it back over to Mark. Thanks, Mark.
And thank you, Aaron. I would now like to introduce Heather Grondin, Vice President of Communications and Stakeholder Relations for Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority.
Great, thank you, Mark, and thank you everyone for joining us today. In addition to the construction progress information shared by the CEOs, today is also marking an exciting milestone in the delivery of the Gordie Howe International Bridge Community Benefits Plan. Launched nearly a year ago on June 14th, 2019, Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority, Bridging North America, the Michigan Department of Transportation, as well as our third-party delivery partners are working together to make significant progress in the delivery of the initiatives under our neighborhood infrastructure strategy and our workforce development and participation strategy, both of which are outlined in our community benefits plan. Last November, the team started implementing the first initiative under the neighborhood infrastructure strategy, and that was the community organization investment. The community organization investment is a $100,000 allowance that will be made available for the years of 2020 to 2024. The $100,000 is being split evenly between not-for-profit organizations and charitable organizations on the Canadian side of the project and the US side of the project. The organizations who can apply for the funding are those that are located directly in or providing services to our host communities. And for this project, we define our host communities as those in Sandwich and West Windsor on the Canadian side, and Delray and Southwest Detroit on the US side. Funding is allocated for events, programming, and infrastructure improvements that will directly benefit those communities. The first successful recipients of the 2020 Community Organization Investment will be announced shortly. But first, I'd like to take a few minutes to walk you through our overall selection process. The open call for applications ran between November 2019 and January 2020. We received positive feedback from community members and received 60 submissions or applications in response to that open call. In total, 28 of those were from Canadian organizations and 32 were from US organizations. Following the submission period, in February of this year, we undertook an administrative review, and that resulted in 50 of those initiatives being deemed eligible and moving forward to our next stage. Our next stage in the selection process was perhaps the most important. This is where we called upon the project's local community group to review all 50 of those submissions. Our local community group is made up of 16 stakeholders representing residents, businesses, organizations, and Indigenous people from both Windsor and Detroit. These volunteers reviewed all 50 of those submissions and provided recommendations to senior management at Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority, Bridging North America, and the Michigan Department of Transportation for consideration. Why this was so critical for us is that it gave us the opportunity to get a local perspective and for us to identify and learn about regional needs, and that directly influenced our final decision on which initiatives would receive funding under this investment. I would like to note that a number of representatives from our local community group are joining us today, including Windsor Ward 2 Councillor Fabio Costante. The project team very much thanks and appreciates the work done by this local community group, as it directly influenced the final decisions made about which initiatives would receive funding. Funding for the initiatives that will be announced shortly will be received in July of 2020. I will note that the projects that are being funded will be implemented over the time period of July of this year to December 31st of 2021. Our original plan was to have all initiatives delivered within a one-year time frame. However, in recognition of the impacts of COVID-19, we've extended the implementation period by 6 months. This will allow the recipients to determine if any changes are needed to their implementation time frame. With that, I'm pleased to share the list of the successful recipients for the 2020 Community Organization Investment. You'll see that those are now listed on your screen. I will take a minute to go through each of those initiatives. First, on the Canadian side, there are 6 initiatives that will be sharing the $50,000. First, the Sandwich First Baptist Church will receive $20,000 to construct the Sandwich Underground Railroad Museum. Society of St. Vincent de Paul will receive $11,000 toward the Helping Hands Friendship Center. This program provides no-cost fun activities for diverse residents of Windsor's West End. Friends of the Court will receive $8,000 to enhance landscaping at Mackenzie Hall in Sandwich. Big Brothers Big Sisters of Windsor Essex will receive $4,500 to create a targeted outreach campaign to find new in-school mentors to serve 75 more children and youth from the Sandwich area. The Essex Region Conservation Authority will receive $4,100 to offer a bi-national Detroit River Canadian cleanup event in Sandwich, and this is in response to the need that goes beyond their annual cleanups. Finally, on the Canadian side, Les Amis Duff Babby will receive $2,400 to host a grand opening event at the Duff Babby Mansion. This will commemorate the partnership that was recently established between the City of Windsor, Heritage Trust, and Les Amis Duff Babby. Regarding projects on the U.S. side that will share the $50,000, the first is West Verner and Springwell's Business Improvement District, which will receive $15,000 to purchase equipment to design and implement a social media marketing campaign to promote the West Verner and Springwell's businesses. St. Anne de Detroit Catholic Church, a food pantry, will receive $15,000 to purchase equipment to enhance and expand the pantry's food storage and handling capabilities, and this will work to serve a growing number of individuals and families in need. Finally, Bridging Communities will receive $15,000 to increase senior programming in Delray through enhanced support services. On behalf of the entire Gordie Howe International Bridge project team, we'd like to congratulate all recipients of the 2020 Community Organization Investment Funding. As I noted, a number of the representatives from these organizations are with us on the call today, and we very much look forward to witnessing the positive outcomes that each project will have on our important community members and neighbors to the project. I'd now like to introduce Lana Talbot, Cultural Director with Sandwich First Baptist Church, to say a few words about the project that they'll be delivering. Ms. Talbot?
Reverend Henry Green and the congregation of Sandwich First Baptist Church are more than delighted and grateful for you choosing us to be one of the recipients of such an honorable award. We would like to thank the Communities Investment Initiative and Bridging North America for just even considering us. Sandwich First Baptist Church has been located in its Sandwich since 1851 when it was built. We are so happy that we will be able to continue to share the story of the Underground Railroad. That just didn't happen, it just didn't stop at the Detroit River, but it came through. I am a direct descendant of the Underground Railroad. And it pleases me to say that the joining together of two nations, of the United States and Canada, and being able to bridge the gap that sometimes exists, it's just a wonderful thing to be able to do. The Underground Railroad is very important, and the fact that Sandwich will have the first Black Underground Railroad Museum in the city of Windsor, it's a tribute. It's a tribute to all people, but especially to the African Canadian. Because in 1844, there were three people that went from Sandwich Baptist Church to England to ask the Queen Victoria, for a parcel of land. And she was so gracious to give the inhabitants of Sandwich, the colored inhabitants of Sandwich, a parcel of land, a half a hectare of land. What a gift. And here we stand today with that same gift and the same giving from different organizations so that we can really bridge the gap of humanity, not just in Sandwich or in Delray or just in Canada and the United States, but around the world, because we are human and we've learned now how to love and how to be grateful and how to be thankful. And that's one of the things we are. We're also grateful that one of the remaining matriarchs of Sandwich from the beginning 11 families is Sister Charlotte Watkins, who's now 86 years old. What a blessing. We are so grateful and we're honored to receive this recipient. The Underground Railroad will teach our story which really has never been told. We are ready to tell our story now. And thank you.
Ms. Talbot, we very much look forward to exploring the museum and learn more of the history that you just spoke briefly about. I'd now invite Phyllis Edwards, Executive Director with Bridging Communities, to share a few words about their project.
Good morning. It's a great day in the neighborhood. It is indeed a pleasure to be before you today, and I give thanks on behalf of Bridging Communities staff, our board of directors, and certainly the residents we serve for this great honor of being a recipient of this funding. Our Bridging Community started out as Project Save, Seek and Visit the Elderly over 40 years ago, and it has transitioned to Bridging Communities in 1999 because we realized that seniors were their quality of life was only as good as the community in which they live. We have been providing those elder care services since then, and we expanded to include neighborhood stabilization and housing development. As a result of this funding, Bridging Community will enhance its capacity to reach more seniors in the Delray area, and we're going to focus on 4 areas of service. The first being, of course, medical and health, medical transportation to the doctor and to the pharmacy to ensure that they're meeting getting what they need to remain in their home and remain healthy. The second would be around technology. If COVID-19 has proven anything, it has shown us the gap between technology, especially as it relates to seniors, the lack thereof. And so ensuring that seniors do have access to technology, internet services, and so they won't have to struggle to access information, connected them with technology so that they can perhaps participate in our host travel sites and virtual tours, and also to connect with the other family members and other seniors and help to reduce the social isolation. Our third would be to ensure that they have the food and groceries that they need, toiletries and resources to remain healthy. And since they are a part of the most vulnerable population as a result of just life, but also in addition to COVID, we want to make sure that they have those things. And finally, we are working to ensure that they have what they need legally to be independent, to remain in their home, and to ensure that their wishes are carried out as they continue to age in place. As I said earlier, it is indeed a pleasure and an honor to be before you today and to be the recipient of this first round of funding. And as I always say in Bridging Communities, if living is your priority, then aging is your destiny. Plan ahead for it. We look forward to the work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. The services that you provide and will continue to provide through this funding will surely benefit seniors in the Southwest Detroit area. So organizations interested in applying for the 2021 funding cycle are encouraged to stay tuned. We will be looking to open that next call for submissions in November of this year. To stay up to date on the Gordie Howe International Bridge project and the ongoing delivery of the Community Benefits Plan, we encourage everyone to visit www.gordiehoweinternationalbridge.com and continue to follow us or begin following us on our various social media channels. We post project photos and images and interviews with project team members, and it's a great way to stay up to date and connected with the project team. With that, Mark, I'll turn it back over to you to start the question and answer period with the media representatives who have joined us today.
And thank you, Heather, and also thank you, Lana and Phyllis, for joining us today. So we are now moving into the question and answer period of our presentation. A reminder that questions will only be taken by accredited media who are joining us here today. To get started, we would ask that you use the chat function on the Microsoft Teams call to type in your name and your media affiliation, the organization you represent, so that will put you into a queue for questions. I will then introduce each reporter. At that time, please unmute your microphone and you will be allowed one question and one follow-up during each turn. And again, please stay muted until it's your time to ask a question. A reminder that the information that has been presented today has been sent to you electronically. And as Aaron and Bryce had mentioned, since we are unable to take media on a tour of our construction sites, we have also included some B-roll, some video that you can use in filing your stories. Please don't hesitate in using that. First question is going to be coming from Don Wall at Daily Commercial News.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I was just wondering how productivity has been affected on the construction site with COVID. Any delays? There would have to have been training for new health and safety protocols. So could you talk about any delays? What % of productivity may have been reduced for a period? How it was dealt with?
I'll ask Aaron Epstein to respond to that question, and then with a follow-up from Bryce.
Sure, thanks. That's a good question. Before I go there, I guess I just wanted to say congratulations to all of the recipients of the community initiatives, and I'm really looking forward, as the project is as well, looking forward to seeing the benefits around in the communities surrounding the project sites as it relates to those awards. So congrats to them. As far as your question goes, yes, there have been some productivity impacts. Still too early to tell with regards to the overall schedule of the project, but as Bryce mentioned in his earlier remarks, we're still on schedule with regard to the end of 2024 for a completion date. The pandemic is continuing and ongoing, so at this point in time, the best information we have and best scheduling that we have is that we're still on our close to schedule.
Bryce, anything you would like to add?
Thanks, Mark. I guess the first thing I'll say is I'll second Aaron's congrats to all the recipients. It's pretty exciting news to them, and congratulations for being recognized. I agree with Aaron. It is early days to understand the impact, and I agree that there are productivity issues that have to be worked through. I mean, if you stop and think about it for a minute, and I'll say this, and Aaron's head may swell, but that's okay. You think about what we're doing here and the complexity of the project to begin with, and now we're doing it all through a pandemic that really nobody alive today has any experience on. And to the credit of B&A, they have had spot checks by the Ministry of Labor a number of times, and they always come out with 2 thumbs up on how they're dealing with the safety protocols. So it's a lot of stuff is being learned by a lot of people, but to the credit of Aaron and his team, they're doing a very good job on ensuring construction continues safely for all those involved. So I just want to make mention of that, and we will look and work with B&A on the productivity challenges and how we're going to manage it as we go forward.
Don, did you have a follow-up question?
That's good, thanks.
Thank you. Next question comes from Rich Garten. He has a question about community benefits for Heather Grondin, and then we'll go to a project question to Bryce and Aaron. Rich?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, Heather. I'm just curious how much money doled out today. How much of a percentage does that make up of the total community benefits for this project? And I guess will this be a frequent thing, like a biannual type of announcement, or do you plan on rolling the money out kind of slowly and over time?
Great. Thank you, Rich. For the neighborhood infrastructure strategy component of the community benefits plan, $20 million has been set aside for those initiatives. Today's announcement is $100,000 of that $20 million. I don't know what percentage that is, Rich. I'm in communications, not in finance, so someone else is going to have to figure out that math for you. I will note that for this initiative, the community organization investment, that $100,000 will be distributed each year over that 5-year period. So this is a great example of one initiative that will continue through the design build phase. In community benefits, in the plan, we have a number of initiatives that are one-offs or will occur at one time. So it's a bit of a mix. Some will continue throughout the design build period, and some will be one-offs.
Thank you.
Rich, you had a question for Bryce and Aaron?
Yeah. So based on where we are with the project right now, does it almost work to your benefit, from a timing perspective, that you don't have a loaded job site? You're still kind of in the design phase. So maybe explain how this might be a bit more difficult if you were a bit further along with the project and you were actually constructing the bridge, the kind of difficulties that you might come across from a physical distancing perspective.
Aaron, I'll pitch that to you.
Yeah, I guess my overall response to that is there's never a good time for a pandemic. We certainly have been adversely impacted, as mentioned previously, with productivity, with some from scheduling our crafts and crews, of getting them to the job site and having them work safely. The new training that's gone on with regards to the government protocols that have put in place, as well as what we believe to be industry standard for how to maintain social distancing and other activities as far as working goes. Some of the work that's ongoing now that I mentioned is all in preparation for the work to come. So to the extent that the work now is challenged, and some productivity declines that we've seen, that all starts paving the way towards ultimately the rest of the project as we ongo activities. So right now we are, as I said, finalizing some of the design, but at the same time we're also out there doing our preparatory works for in accordance with our schedule. And to the extent we have impacts, it could have further repercussions. However,
Aaron, your microphone has gone off.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
There you go. I'm not sure where I left out there, but I was saying a lot of good things about the crews that we have and the team we've got in place that are continuing to figure things out. It's one of a very complex project, and one of the things we do is figure out challenges, whether it's engineering challenges or project management challenges. We're continuing to figure it out, and really it's a testament to the teams that we have in place there to figure this one out as well. So hopefully we'll get through this pandemic pretty quickly, and the experts and the scientists will figure out a cure, and then we can continue about our way as we had originally planned, and we won't have any long-term implications to the project. But
Bryce, is there anything you would like to add?
The only thing I would add, Mark, is I understand where the reporter is going with the question, and I think it's around if you're working inside in crowded conditions inside a building, is that going to be harder to deal with? And it looks like it will be. So I think the really important thing that we need to do as a community and as a country is make sure that we prevent a second wave in a year from now. And so that has to be, I think, as a community, our focus. And as Aaron said, we're working through what the schedule looks like and trying to figure out what we do to help minimize any resurgence of the pandemic in the future.
Thank you. Next question comes from Sonia Varma at CBC.
Hi there. This question is on community benefits, so for Heather. Heather, you mentioned there were 28 applications on the Canadian side for that funding. I wonder, you mentioned now that 6 have received funding, so are the rest now ineligible, or can they reapply, and what would help those groups get funding?
Great, thank you. All applicants are able to reapply for the next funding cycle or funding cycles throughout the coming years. As well, successful applicants this year can also apply for funding. The funding is provided for 1 year only. We have provided feedback to all applicants, both the successful and unsuccessful applicants, and provided some feedback on how they may be able to move forward to become eligible into the next year. We continue to evolve our eligibility criteria. We have a lot of great lessons learned from the program that we ran this year that we will incorporate into next year. And yes, we'll definitely encourage those applicants who are unsuccessful this year to reevaluate and come back to us in the upcoming cycle.
So, do you have a follow-up, Virginia?
Yes. So what was it about the applications that weren't perhaps successful that they, in the eyes of the group, that was missing?
I think what's important to look at is what was successful in the applicants that did receive funding. In working with our local community group, what really resonated with the successful applications included the number of people that will be positively impacted by the initiatives that will be carried out, how those initiatives fit into some of our broader community priorities of making connections, aesthetic improvements, catering to youth and seniors and a variety of age groups. I'll note that in working with our local community group, they tried to identify, and what really resonated with them was initiatives that could work together to have as broad of an impact as possible. So mixing and matching projects or initiatives that touched and impacted youth and seniors and history and aesthetics, so that it really did become a fulsome package of initiatives. The other submissions that were received were great, but these were the ones that really resonated the most with our local community group.
Thank you, Sonia. I'll now go to Virginia Gordon from Michigan Radio.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you very much. Listen, I may just be confused, so I'm asking these questions as a point of clarification about the project. I'm hearing two things. I'm hearing that there has been an impact on progress and productivity, quite understandably, from the COVID pandemic. And I'm also hearing that you're on track for expected opening in July 2024. And I don't quite understand how those two things fit together. I'm curious specifically sort of how far behind you are now on where you would hope to be at this time, and what are the variables that impact whether or not is the July 2024 thing simply a hope and a dream because none of us know what's going to happen? Is what you're really saying is who knows? I'm just not following. Apologies if I'm ignorant.
I'm going to pass that question on to Bryce and Aaron to respond. Bryce?
Thanks, Mark. No, it's a good question you're asking, and it's it's been a couple of months, almost 3 months, dealing with COVID-19, and we're working with B&A to understand the impacts and then how can we mitigate those impacts. So the reason why we're still showing end of 2024, not July, but end of 2024, is because that's still 4 years out. There's still a lot of opportunity over the next few years to figure out how to mitigate and against what's happened with COVID-19. Trying to predict how this pandemic will unfold and impact us over the next year is, very difficult. So it's something that we're working closely with B&A on to understand what we think could possibly happen. But as we say right now, we think there's still opportunities to mitigate, but it will be a challenge. There's no doubt about it. Aaron.
Yeah, I would I would agree with Bryce on everything he just said. I think the project overall, from a schedule perspective, is a very complicated effort. So the schedule itself that we talk about and some of the impacts that we've talked about, it depends on which component that you're talking about as well. So we think of our project schedule as it relates to, we have a schedule for the Canadian POE, one for the US POE, one for the Michigan interchange, and one for the bridge itself, and even the bridge schedule is broken out as well. So when we talk about impacts on the schedule, it depends which real schedule we're talking about. But overall, completion date, as Bryce said, for the entire schedule, still targeting towards the end of 2024. And we're still working towards that. So we do have interim impacts that we're looking at as well. But right now we're progressing on our schedule as best we can. And as Bryce said, it's very difficult to forecast what the schedule will look like long term. But at this point in time, we have not yet seen the adverse impacts we're having on productivity have not yet translated into anything other than being able to still complete it at the end of 2024 based on current scheduling.
Virginia, did you have a follow-up?
Only, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot here. I just want to make sure if you have an answer that I'm getting it, is that would you have a way of estimating, like since all this began, where this has this put you behind? Is there a way of measuring how much it's put you behind at this point? I understand you're saying there's so many variables until the end of 2024. You're still hoping that whatever it is, you're going to be able to catch up and maintain schedule. But is there any way of saying, besides general productivity issues, like what is that? I'm not sure what that means, how much so far you feel like you've been impacted.
It's I think it's too early to say in some of the specifics there, but what I can say is, some of the activities we're doing as relates to at the POE sites is really related to preparing the ground and some of the soil consolidation work. So the wick drains have been installed, and we were able to do that from maintaining social distancing. We're able to put surcharge on top. And now it's just a matter, as far as the weight of the surcharge is pushing some of that water out up to the wick drains and consolidating soils. That has, not really impacted by the pandemic itself for the soil consolidation. So that work is ongoing, and that doesn't require really a large effort of people to do that as far as the surcharge goes. So that's some of the work ongoing. There are ancillary activities that do have impacts, and we're still continuing to monitor them, work with WDBA as well to inform them of what's going on and keep them informed so that we can plan accordingly. Every day, we continue to meet with WDBA, explain what the issues are we're seeing in the field, and work a path forward. It's all about seeing an issue, working a path forward, teaming with WDBA to continue to push the project forward in a safe manner to be able to build a quality project for the project overall.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Next question goes to Teresina Medeiros at CKLW. Before you ask your question, Teresina, I already remind the media who have not asked a question to please put your name and your affiliation in the chat so you can go into the queue. Teresina? So I just got a note from Teresina saying, in case my microphone doesn't work, and I'm assuming that's the case. So her question is, I'm wondering if there are any concerns about funding, given the Canadian government is spending so much money to keep the country going. I'll ask Bryce to respond to that.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks, Teresina. If you refer to funding as the cost of the project, that's already been set aside. That we've got a contract with B&A, and B&A therefore has a contract with us, and we will honor that contract. It's money that's already been accounted for. So, while I agree with the concern people have about financial requirements for all the different countries and governments that are dealing with COVID-19. That's not related to our contract and our budget.
I don't see any other questions coming from Teresina. In fact, I don't see any other questions coming from any other media. While we are here, if any media have a question, if you could open your mic now and we could do it one by one. Nothing? Okay, in that case, this concludes our media briefing today. I'd like to thank you all for joining us and remind media that the material is now in your inboxes. If you have any additional questions, please call our dedicated media relations line at 226-757-1716. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank all the communications and stakeholder relations team, communications team, as well as the BNA communications team for helping orchestrate this, our first virtual media availability. Let me tell you, I'm sure that they're happy that it's over because there are a lot of late nights and phone calls. So thank you everybody for joining us. At this point in time, we will conclude. Bye-bye. Bonjour.